Welcome to Shinshin Games. Today we are here to talk about my tips on how to improve as a support main. I've been playing any solo queue as a support main for almost a year now. I'm very close to master, and here are some of my tips on how to carry your team as a support main and make the most out of your role. As you climb into the higher ranks, you'll notice that warding is a very important factor in League of Legends. Most support mains know they have to ward, but they don't necessarily know how and why they should ward. Warding gives your team information, which allows your team to outsmart your opponent. An example of that would be the importance of lane ward. Many support mains in lower rank tend to forget about the lane ward, which in my opinion is the most important ward location. Lane ward provides information for your team on how the enemy distributes. It allows split pushes to avoid ganks and gives you a good sense of whether or not you should be looking for objectives. As a support main, you really have to consider the intention behind each of these wards. A good support main would adjust the way they ward depending on the factors that's within the game. For example, playing against Evelynn, it is smart to always ward around jungle camps, because Evelynn is usually invisible, and this will allow your team to see where she's going next and prevent ganks from happening. So keep in mind in your solo queue games to really think about why you're putting the ward down rather than just mindlessly putting the ward down because you have to. The second tip I have for you is figuring out your style of support. Support is an extremely versatile role. To perform really well as a support, I recommend narrowing your champion pool to one style of support. In my opinion, there are 3 types of support: the Enchanter, CC support, and Poke support. Enchanters are champions such as Lulu, Janna, and Nami. They protect the ADC and enhance their survivability and damage. CC supports are champions such as Thresh, Alistar, and Leona. They create chances for their ADC to obtain advantages by engaging with abilities that immobilizes enemies. Poke supports are champions such as Vel'Koz, Bran, and Zyra. Their main role is to deal damage and weaken enemies for your team. While learning all champions are a good way of improving, my recommendation is to choose one of these 3 types of support and stick with it. Here is why. Take the example of Thresh. He can utilize his abilities to prevent the enemy frontline from reaching your carries, or assist in engaging onto the enemy backline. Now, the real question is, during a team fight, should you peel or engage? The answer is, it depends on a lot of things. Is your ADC strong enough, and do they require you to peel? Is their back or frontline strong? Ultimately, it boils down to which of these options gives you the highest chance to win the game. And to know that, you must have a good amount of experience with one of these style of support. Sticking with one style of support allows you to learn much faster, and also make sure that you're using your abilities in the best way possible and brings the most amount of benefit to your team. The third tip I want to talk about is roaming. In my opinion, roaming is the most beneficial act a support can do. In high elo, you often see supports roam all the time. This is not because they are looking for kills in other lanes, but rather they are securing vision and giving their ADC an XP lead. Roaming is difficult. Without proper preparation, it is easy to make mistakes and cause your ADC to lose resources. There are a few things that should be on your mind when you roam. They are the safety of your ADC and the minion wave. Here are 3 rules that I follow before I roam. Rule number 1 is to make sure that the minion wave is pushing to your ADC. This rule exists to ensure that your ADC is not losing any resources because of the lack of your presence. If you are not around, the enemy support will attempt to engage on your ADC. However, if the wave is pushing to your ADC, it makes it extremely difficult for them to do so. Rule number 2 is to secure your ADC's position before you roam. What I mean by that is to ward around bot lane to ensure that if a dive is to happen with a jungler, you will be back in time, or your ADC will be able to prevent it. Rule number 3 is to record and ask for summoner spells. Recording summoner spells gives your ADC an idea on whether or not the enemy bot lane can look for a play. It gives your ADC a leverage to know if they should play safe or aggressive. A good way to keep track of summoner spells is to simply ping it when it is used, and later on type in chat the exact time the summoner spell will be available again. For example, Flash is a 300-second cooldown spell, so you simply just have to add 5 minutes from when it was used. Now, you might think that these small tips have very little impact in the game. However, to win the game, you really need every small tip you can use. Besides, knowing your enemy's summoner spells is a lot more important than you imagine. When you're roaming, it's a good idea to ask for summoner spells. It gives you better information on how to execute your roam, and whether or not you should be looking out for a flash before using your abilities. Just because you're playing more games doesn't mean you'll improve. You need to have an open-minded and critical mindset. You should always be considering, how can I improve? What could I have done that would have changed the result of that game? How am I supposed to win this game? I always say that if a pro player could have won that game, then that must mean you have something to improve on. You should compare yourself to the best, not the worst. And you don't want to have bad mentality. People that say stuff like, oh, I'm doing better than their support, therefore I should have won, or I lost that game because of bad luck, or even, oh, I'm stuck in this elo because of my teams. Because the truth is, that is simply not true. You cannot be stuck in an elo because of bad teams. You're stuck in that elo because your skills are not significantly better than the rest of the elo. If you're slightly better than your teammates or the enemy team, it is likely that you won't rise much. If you're trying to get from gold to plat, you need to be much, much better than everyone else in gold in order to climb out of there. And that concludes my tips for you as a support main. This is my first YouTube video and I plan to make a lot more in the future. If you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be making more in-depth videos for each individual champion. Let me know in the comment section below which champions you'd like to see and what kind of videos you want in the future. Thank you for coming and see you next time.